Welcome to What's Going On, the weekly podcast and videocast of First United Methodist Church in Yankton, South Dakota. Hi, and welcome to this week's episode of What's Going On. I'm Pastor Katie here at First United Methodist, and I'm glad you could join me for this episode. I need to start this episode off with a confession. This is hard to do, to admit when I have made a mistake. But this Sunday in the sermon, I said that Jason tried to bring Skippy peanut butter into our marriage. And Jason had left the service by this point. Our kids were on another level, and so he didn't stay for the sermon. But when I went home and I told him about the story that I shared, he was hurt. And he said, "Katie, I would never think that Skippy peanut butter is at the same level as Jif peanut butter." And I said, "Oh, I'm so sorry." And I have a memory though of you bringing different peanut butter home early in our marriage. And he said, "I tried to bring Peter Pan peanut butter home." And I was like, "Oh, you're right. It was Peter Pan." I still don't like Peter Pan peanut butter, but Peter Pan is a step up from Skippy. And so I need to set the record straight. Jason never tried to bring Skippy peanut butter into our marriage. One time he brought home Peter Pan, and I think it was because Peter Pan was on sale. And so I don't want you to go around thinking that Jason is a fan of Skippy peanut butter. He doesn't want you to buy him Skippy peanut butter. He's fully on board with Jif now. But I was wrong. And I hurt my husband by implying something that was not true about him. And I'm sorry to him and to all of you for that mistake that I have made. See how that went right along? I mean, that's true. That's all true. That was a conversation we had on Sunday. But if you have watched, if you were there for the sermon or watched the sermon since then, you know that that is very much in line with what we were talking about on Sunday, in forgiveness and in owning our own stuff and apologizing, feeling remorse, understanding when we've hurt someone, even if it's a little thing. And instead of just brushing it off, to be able to try to do the work to make it right. And so I wasn't expecting to have such an immediate application of that in my own life, but there you go. God works in mysterious ways and sometimes not so mysterious ways, and God works in God's own timing, and sometimes that timing takes a lifetime, and sometimes it takes 10 minutes from the time that you get home from church. So I'm glad that I could clear the air there. That was my own faulty memory, and I certainly don't want to smear my husband's name by insinuating. To all those who love Skippy peanut butter, I hope you know that this is somewhat in jest. It's just my own preference. If you love Skippy, God bless. I love that for you. I know that you're not buying my Jif peanut butter at the store, and so we can all live in harmony, I think, on that. But anyway, I hope you're enjoying this series so far on forgiveness. It's based on the work of Adam Hamilton and his book, Forgiveness. But what I'm finding in this series, that when we're talking about forgiveness, we're really talking about relationships and really talking about living with other people and living in community with other people and in relationship with God, which is where we started the series. And then last week we talked about those intimate relationships. I do need to clarify that I made one other mistake. Oh man, if you thought that I was perfect, this podcast is really gonna be a rough one for you. But also please come spend some more time with me. It'll be very quick before you are disillusioned by this idea that I'm perfect, because I'm not. This coming Sunday, we're going to be talking about kind of all of our general relationships, our acquaintances, friendships, people that we don't even know, And then we're going to end on our family relationships, which I think is really smart because um, I think our marriage and intimate relationships are really hard because of the investment, but our family one, the family dynamic with parents and children and siblings, super hard. And we're going to talk about that right before we go into Thanksgiving. So it's going to be fresh in our minds as we head into our first kind of holiday of the season. And so I think that'll be really appropriate and good. And so I will make sure I have those switched up. One of my confirmation students actually called me out on it because they are taking sermon notes and they are very diligent in what they're listening to, which I'm pleasantly surprised by. But they said, well, on your slide, on the roadmap slide, this is what you said. And I was like, you know what? I was wrong. And I'll make sure I fix it moving forward. So good job, confirmation students, for keeping me honest. It wasn't intentional, just the way that I thought it was going to go versus the way it was going is just different. And I think the way that it's actually going to go ultimately is better. So um, yeah, but I've heard from many people that Sunday sermon really hit a chord, really was something that they needed. And I think it's something that we all need is forgiveness and being in relationship with people, having friendships, having just living in a community with people is hard sometimes. And it's very easy to be hurt and offended and frustrated and slighted by people all the time. People that we know, people that we don't know. This week we're going to talk about, you know, those things that happen to us like throughout the day, and it's not even like intentional necessarily, or people like just total strangers. I mean, honestly, every morning when I have 3 drop-offs every morning between daycare and 2 different schools, you can imagine that there are things, decisions that people make every morning that I question and that I have feelings about, uh, including probably my own. Um, but it's how do we handle that? How do we deal with that? How do we deal with things in our friendships? How do we deal with um, those hurts and those slights and those perceived hurts and perceived slights that happen? Um, and I think that's an important piece of how we are in community together, how we are part of our larger Yankton community, how we are witnesses to living in a way that's not divisive and not adding to the discord that is in the world, but how to live counterculturally in that way. I think that's a really big part of our witness moving forward is um, being a people of grace and being a people of love. I go back to our vision statement all the time. The vision that we came up with about a year ago now has just truly resonated with me, and it's been something that I go back to constantly, of being a church of hope, healing, and belonging that loves and serves all through Christ our Lord. And I think in order to achieve that, we have to be masters at forgiveness and masters at grace and masters of really being filled with God's love, um, to the point of when those hard things happen, um, that they don't overpower us, because we need to work on our own healing, the healing of our relationships with God and with others, um, in order for people to truly belong and for us to truly belong, as we are. And then also, to serve all. And all means all. All means the people that we like, the people that we struggle with, the people that we don't understand, the people who have hurt us, the people who don't have the time of day for us, that we are called to serve all. And the reason we are called to do that comes from the teaching of Jesus himself. And one of the most formative passages for me as a Christian, and I think for me as a pastor, there's a few of them that really stand out to me. But Matthew 25 is the sheep and the goats passage where Jesus talks about, like, when you serve the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you served me, and he goes on to talk about, like, when you gave them something to drink, you gave me something to drink. When you loved them, you loved me. When you clothed them, you clothed me. And the same is true when you fail to do those things, you fail to love me. And so I think that's one of the themes that we're going to pull out in this next week is this idea again of we can't truly be right with God if we are holding on to things that make us not right with other people. That we have to do some hard work of healing what's in us. And forgiveness is so much about what is going on in us. And then there's another step called reconciliation. And I think oftentimes people think those are the same thing, and they're not. So we're going to talk about that, about how forgiveness is about letting go of the right to hold on to that anger, to hold on to that pain, to desire that retribution, to let that hurt dictate our own lives. Forgiveness is about letting that go, about giving up that right. Forgiveness is not necessarily always tied to reconciliation. Reconciliation is the writing of the relationship, but that takes two people. Forgiveness doesn't. Forgiveness is about something internal. Reconciliation is about a relationship. There is no reconciliation without real forgiveness and also real repentance, which we talked about this last week. Remember, repentance, acknowledging what we've done wrong. I think, I tried to at the beginning of the podcast, like give an example of what true repentance is, like acknowledging, like I realize what I did wrong and how I hurt you. It is confession. So, saying like, yep, I'm sorry. And then I feel like there's four of them and I'm forgetting. I know the last one is change. Help me out here. I can't remember off the top of my head. And you know what? I have the book right here. I could look at it. It's an open book quiz, right? Um, let's see what we have. Regret. Awareness, regret, confession, change. So feeling bad about it. Like I feel bad. I feel bad that I did that wrong thing and I'm going to do something about it. Reconciliation requires that as well. Because without, I think, that peace, there is no real way to rebuild that relationship. And reconciliation is kind of a rebuilding. But not all forgiveness is going to lead to that. And sometimes not all forgiveness should lead to that. And I think that's another important piece. One of the things we're going to do in this coming sermon is kind of clarify some things about what forgiveness is and what it isn't. Because so often I think we tend to think forgiveness is about saying like, oh, it doesn't really matter, like no big deal. Sometimes it really is no big deal, right? Like the peanut butter thing, at the end of the day, when you think about like all of the hurts and whatever, is pretty minor. Other than that, I do want to strive to be honest in my preaching and honest in my portrayal of Jason. So like it's a small thing, but it's indicative of bigger thing, and I want to make sure that I'm right about those things. And I thought I was, and I wasn't. Our memories sometimes are tricky things. Sometimes it isn't a big deal and we forgive because, it just can kind of roll off us and we move on with our day and our life and it didn't really injure us in a massive way. Sometimes that is not the case. And forgiveness, again, isn't about saying it was all right what you did. It's about saying, I'm letting go of my right, and it is a right, and it is a natural thing to hold on to my anger about this and my bitterness. I'm letting go of my right to let this dictate who I am and the decisions I make and how I feel about the world. That has nothing to do, and in some ways, it's still validating that what you did was not okay because I have a right to feel the way I'm feeling. I have a right to be angry. but I'm going to choose not to let that anger control me. I'm going to let go of that right for my own health, for my own healing, for my own sense of self. That is separate, right? Than restoring that relationship. That is separate than the consequences that that person is naturally going to face. Because letting go of that right for retribution doesn't mean that there's not consequences. And it doesn't mean that those consequences, and sometimes it also doesn't mean that there aren't like punishments that still need to be made to help that person grow. But the fine line, the nuance there is when you forgive, anything moving forward is not out of retribution. It's not out of a sense of they hurt me, so I need to hurt them. It's a sense of helping that other person grow and helping them that if this is a pattern of behavior, that they learn from it, right? So with so I'll give parenting is always a good example, right? So my children, maybe they didn't listen to me. I can even give an example from this morning. We're driving, and the first drop off we do is Abigail at daycare, and then I take the boys to school. And while we're at Abigail's, we realize Ethan doesn't have his hat or gloves on, and it's cold outside. And I said, Ethan, where are your hat and gloves? I don't know. And I said, who is responsible to make sure that you have your hat or gloves? You are. No. And so we had to drive back to the house. I found the hat and gloves, and then the boys were upset that they didn't have that much time to play before school. And I said, well, this is a natural consequence. If we have to drive back to the house, that's less time that you get um, in order to play before school. And so if you want more time, you have to make sure you have all your stuff with you. So as a natural consequence, a consequence that had to happen. Now I can forgive Ethan and I did, because I was willing to go back and get his stuff because I'm also a mom and I'm not going to let my kid be cold. And I'm not going to hold on to that. I almost forgot about it, and it happened like an hour ago from the time I'm recording this. So I'm not going to like stew over it all day, but the consequence is still there. And it needs to be there so that he learns, right? Like that is a natural consequence. Maybe another time, if we don't have the time to go back, then, his little hands might be cold. I'll have to stick them in his pockets for the morning. A natural consequence that cannot be erased even by my willingness to forgive this action, or at least not to hold on to it and not to just spend all day just like, oh, my kids don't ever listen to me, that would be holding on to that hurt instead of, okay, I forgive you, but we still need to learn this lesson, right? So I hope that this series has been good for you. I hope that I know certainly it's been already so beneficial to me, and I'm learning along with you. I think these are things that we learn for a whole lifetime, right? We never stop learning how to live with people and how to love people and how to be a good church member with people, a good community member, and just a good and working toward having good relationships all the way around. So yeah, so this coming one is called 70 times 7. So that'll be good. 2 more weeks of this series. And I'm just, again, so tickled by it. It's been good for my own heart and soul. We've got some things coming up I just want to make you aware of and be very clear about what they are so that you are clear. So if you haven't already turned in your estimate of giving, please make sure you do that. This Sunday, a leadership team is meeting, and we would love to have as many of those in as possible prior to that meeting. This is also last chance to get in any applications for leadership team so that we can get those set for Charge Conference. Next week's podcast, little plug, I'm going to have our DS Brandon Vetter on the podcast ahead of our Charge Conference on the 24th. So you get to know him a little bit. Prior to him coming, you can feel like I have a little sense of who he is. I think you're going to love it. He's a really incredible person, an incredible leader, someone I've worked with on the board of ordained ministry. I worked with him my first year in Mitchell. He was at Fusion when I was at First, and we worked together and collaborated on some things there. I've just been really impressed with him. He came most recently from Legacy in Bismarck, North Dakota. Um, and and yeah, I'm super excited to have him as our DS. And I can't wait for all of you to get to know him as well. So that's next week's podcast. So you're not going to want to miss that. And then the following week, I'm going to have a couple of guests on the podcast to talk about a new event that's going to be happening on December 1st. So December 1st is the first Sunday of Advent. Last year, we got a little, I think, anxious because Advent started late. This year, it starts right on December 1st. So we should have no problems there. But after worship on December 1st, down in Wesley Hall, there's going to be an event called A Taste of Christmas Heritage. And it's going to be an opportunity to celebrate family Christmas traditions with food, clothing, decorations, and activities. And so for the next couple of weeks, you're going to have an opportunity to sign up to participate or to ask more questions about it. So what we're looking for are people who have Christmas traditions, maybe Christmas foods that are tied to their family in some way, or their origin, their heritage. So for example, in my family, it is not Thanksgiving and Christmas unless we have lefse. That is something I grew up making every fall, and it's just not the holiday season without it. Now, do I know personally or have all of the stuff to make lefse? No. But that is something that is a tradition and is part of our Norwegian heritage. The other side of my family, my other grandmother was German. And one of the things that they did is every New Year's Eve would make something called spekkendikken, which is a spiced pancake with sausage in the middle, and then you eat it with applesauce on top. So that was a New Year's tradition that came out of their German heritage. And so those are some examples of food, but it could be any type of food. So there's going to be, if you would like to bring kind of a family recipe heritage thing, you can do that. They ask for it to be a family portion size, and there's going to be like a little taster buffet happening. Also, if you have like a display, maybe you have like a really cool nativity that has been handed down through your family. That would be a really cool thing, or maybe a special ornament or some other Christmas decoration or something that means something to you and your family. You could come and have that be displayed. And then also, if you have like traditions or stories or things, there's going to be a time as well for those to be shared. I'm really excited about this. It's a really great opportunity for us to share with one another, to learn from each other, and to celebrate all of the diversity that is even in our own church. Um, one of the things that I've really come to love in moving to Yankton is learning more about the Czech heritage, because I did not grow up. I mean, even though I'm from South Dakota and I grew up literally just 2 hours away from here, um, the cultural heritage is so different. So in my area, everyone's Scandinavian in some way, right? You're Norwegian, you're Danish, you're Swedish, you're whatever, and then some Germans thrown in. But here, moving here, it's Czech, and I think that's so cool. And it was just something I wasn't really aware of or thought about or knew anybody kind of with that heritage. So kolaches were a brand new thing to me moving here, learning about Czech days. And, now one of our favorite places to eat is Checkers here in Yankton, which, I mean, how Czech is it? If you get the Beseda meal, that's kind of Czech. So it's kind of just getting to know each other a little bit better, celebrating, and bringing in some of the culture that we all carry with us as part of our heritage. And so I'm really excited about that. Again, that's December 1st. So I'm going to back up a minute. This coming Sunday, the 17th, following worship, we have a leadership team meeting. But if you're not on leadership team, you are invited to stick around and help decorate the angel tree. We don't have our angels just yet. Again, just to give you a little more information on that, instead of participating with our conference shoebox Christmas program, which benefits the children of the reservations in North and South Dakota, we fill a gap in our church with that program, because there is a group of tribal members who do not live on the reservation because the lines of the reservation were moved at a certain point. So when they settled in this area, it was on the reservation, but the reservation lines moved. I'm listening to a podcast on church history right now, and I'm in the middle of the American Indian Wars, and oh, so it's not surprising that the reservation lines got moved because none of the treaties really ever were honored. Um, and so they don't get in on the shoebox Christmas stuff because that's for the people on the reservations. And so we deal with the children of Milk's Camp, who are part of the tribe, but on the reservation. And we've been doing this for years. And so once we get those names of those children, we get their names and ages, and if they're a boy or a girl, their names will be written on angels and put on the angel tree. And then you can come and take as many angels that you are willing to buy gifts for. And you have to sign your name next to the numbered that is on the angel so that we know who took that angel. So if that gift is not getting back, that we can give you a call and be like, hey, got to turn those in. And so when you take an angel, make sure you sign the clipboard that'll be on the table next to the tree. Once the angel tree has been decorated, again, without the angels just yet, there's going to be lunch available. And then whoever still wants to can head out to the Mead Cultural Center north of town and help decorate our tree out there. So for the past few years, we've been having a tree as a part of the Mead's Hall of Trees that have businesses and churches and nonprofits from all around Yankton decorating trees. We love to be a part of that. And so it helps just, again, put us out there into the community a little bit and add to kind of the Christmas spirit in Yankton. And so the 605 kids have been decorating some ornaments for that tree. And the other cool thing that we've done is this year we also again made our calendar for December, which has ideas for service, for donations, for things to do. And we're going to have this out there as well for people in the community to pick up and just maybe get some ideas for how can you put good back into the world during this Christmas season. So we have on the back, it has more information for how to do a lot of these things. We're also going to have that in the newsletter for December. If you were like, I would like a copy of that, it'll go out in the newsletter as well. So that's the 17th. On the 24th, 2:30 is our charge conference with Brandon Vetter, who I've already talked about. And following that, we're going to decorate the church because December 1st is the beginning of Advent. And so if you can stick around after charge conference, many hands make light work and we can get the church beautiful for Christmas. And so again, 2:30 charge conference, probably no later than 3:30 we would start decorating. But I would love it if you would come to charge conference because again, we have a new DS and I want him to meet all of you and I want all of you to tell him how much you love your church, right? So those are some of the things that are happening. Also, don't forget the 15th of December during the worship service will be our children and youth Christmas program. The children got their parts this week and I've read through it and it's so cute and I'm so excited for it. So we've got a lot of good things happening. The 17th of December will be our Blue Christmas service here this year. And then we'll have Christmas Eve services on the 24th. I'm still looking for a couple more families to sign up for Advent candle lighting. And so if that's something that you've had on your heart that you're like, I would really love to do that, and Katie's never asked me, this is my plea to you that one, I am so sorry that I've never thought of you. That is not my intention. I'm sorry if I've hurt you in any way. And I would love to have you light candles. Please let me know and I will send you the sign up to see if whatever is left. So please, if you would love to get to be a part of that, I would love to have you be a part of it. And please just let me know and accept my apology. I'm so sorry if I've hurt anyone over the years by not asking them to do that part of the service. So with that, I think I've talked enough for today. I'm so excited to be doing this series with you. I'm so excited to be in this church with you. And I'm so excited that we are heading into such a fun time of the year here in the church. Until next time, God bless. Thank you for joining us for this episode of What's Going On, a video and audio podcast of First United Methodist Church in Yankton, South Dakota. We'd love to have you join us for worship on Sundays at 10 a.m., either in person or via our live stream, which can be found at our website, www.firstumcyankton.org, or by searching First UMC Yankton on YouTube.